Thanks for joining us, tplmedia.ca, for all kinds of great podcasts that revolve around what Canadians are talking about today. Subscribe wherever you're watching this, and tell a friend, of course. Also make a comment. We make shows based on your comments. Did you know that? Thanks so much to the guys joining me today on this topic. We got Bradie Whetham and Paul Micucci, of course. And the mission today is a discussion about what's going to happen in the wake of Russia creating sanctions for the first time in the world. It's a very ironic moment in that sense that where Russia is usually getting shut down on the resources and the things that they need from the rest of the Western world. Now they're doing that to the world on par. I believe that they are going to reduce by 40% exports on oil.
On oil from the eastern part of the country that got hit by the drone attack, Mike. So, you know, in the beginning of, or the end of January, the drones hit their reserves in the eastern side of the country, basically took out a couple refineries they have, some reserves they have. And so now they've said, okay, we're not able to get it back online, so we're going to start rationing gas from that part of the world or that part of the country. But it's interesting, Mike. So, you know, Russian oil. So those very few people know how the economics of Russian oil works.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just step back for a minute and talk a little bit about Russia and oil, because Russian oil is traditionally sold at a very low price. Being a communist country, they produce it, they put it into market. They primarily, as you and I talked about before the show, use it for their own use in country. So for manufacturing, for their citizens, for the war effort against Ukraine. So for this show, it fluctuates a little bit up and down, but not as much as we do, because we see crazy fluctuations in oil.
We have no control over the price of oil at all in this country.
But because they're a communist country and because they map out the direction of their country with oil, they keep it roughly around $25 a barrel.
Okay, that's really low. Competing with $25 a barrel in the global market, I'm sure, is not making you a lot of money. But that's the exporting perspective on this.
Right.
Because what are they doing more than anything, or at least with half of that oil that they're extracting? They're using it.
They're using it for their own citizens, for the war effort, for everything they're doing. So
all the industry, all the power plants.
So they can keep the cost for their citizenship down, number one, for goods and things they manufacture. They can also take it to market and sell it. So they can go and sell it India, other countries, China. They love low-priced oils. So quite frankly, they can ship it over there. And so there's a big market for it. Did they make a lot of money on it? And is it, let's call it price inflexible. So they're indifferent sometimes to whether they sell it or not.
I understand why they would keep it so low. Not only does it keep it cheap in-house, it keeps it ready for when they're ready to go to that market.
Well, you and I talked about this just before the show. It seems to me that what Russia does is they decommoditize their oil in a lot of ways because it's a base use item in their country.
Exactly.
You know, and as an export item, secondary.
Now, we all remember, so I'm going to pop over for a minute to Norway, because we did a show on Norway a few weeks ago. Equinor, who does the oil distribution for Norway, it's the company, the Crown Petro-Canada type company that they have in Norway. Equinor sells for about $25 to $35. Same thing. So they have a cap on their price for oil as they produce it. They have diversified holdings, so they do a lot of drilling in other nations and other places. But for the most part, they follow the same structure. They don't want oil and gas in their own country to be like ours, to be at a high number, right? They want to keep it down so their citizens can live with regular gas prices. They don't have to pay a lot. And I think we looked in the Middle East. I think, what do we say? Even it's crazy there, but they sell to their own citizenship at,
I think it's
70 cents a liter.
I think it's less than that, actually, Paul.
Less than,
well, I think that in some places it was on par with a bottle of water.
It was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, water sometimes, bottled water can surpass it sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that that's now. The last thing I want to do is sit here sounding like a bunch of communists, but doesn't it seem like a reasonable thing to have this position where the rest of the world right now is floating around on oil prices, and Russia probably doesn't care that much? They've got their own ability to produce, their whole industry, everything is. So they are self-sufficient at the moment. They're not choked on gas.
Well, it's interesting. So you're looking at it now, in the Middle East and all the issues going on in Iran, how we're seeing the spike,
Right.
the price increase. And the longer this goes on, the Strait issues, everything. Now it's just another wrinkle into the dynamic. Now you have Russia saying, oh, well, we had drone attacks. We've been hit. Our reserves in the East are now down.
Yeah.
We're going to start to reduce, we need to ration. So quite frankly, we're going to reduce our exporting by 40%. All of a sudden, the Ukraine hits the eastern side of Russia and the reserves there. Now we're really in trouble, right? So this is we're dancing on the head of a pin here. And all we need is for something to happen on the other side of Russia. And then China and India, which are highly dependent on Russian oil, are really impacted. So it doesn't matter whether they're shipping or not, or whether they can get through the strait. It won't matter at that point because
they're going to be sending nothing anyway.
Well,
So then
India gets most of its oil now from Russia.
Yes.
As of recently. Like, it used to be Iraq before, and they shop wherever it's cheapest, but right now Russia seems to be the cheapest for them. So yeah, they are a major supplier.
for sure.
If you take a look, a lot of the nations that are in trouble right now, it's quite shocking. Sri Lanka, they're on fuel rationing. Pakistan, work week reduction. India, export controls. China, they've got industrial limits.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that in China before. Vietnam, well, it's true. They're highly industrial, right?
You're right.
Vietnam, fuel purchase limits. That's a tough one. That, by the way, when you can't go to the gas station and buy gas, that's when society starts to get really antsy. Thailand, price controls. Let's see. Indonesia, subsidy reduction. So people are paying through the roof for gas and oil. Germany, energy rationing plan is in effect. Italy, public transport adjustments. France, price interventions. So fuel price caps and subsidies all over the place just to keep them in the game and moving along. Indonesia, subsidies have been cut, and people are protesting already. The cost of living. Now they're out there. They've got gas prices on top of that at the highest that they've ever seen it. So just a few of the countries that are struggling right now, as now Russia has put a tighter clamp on the world's fuel consumption.
Yeah, more supply issues. So if they continue, and like I said, there's a mishap in the eastern part of that country, it's really going to change the dynamic of this. And quite frankly, from a Canadian perspective, we're going to go well above $2 a liter. So it's not a joke anymore because we've left ourselves fully exposed to this. So, and it's interesting, when the war happened in Iran, we were looking for a statement on what to do next, what was going to happen in Canada. It's pretty quiet. We said, well, we might, send some people over there, to help out, from get people through the strait from a logistics perspective. There was all these things. And then there was a multitude of different statements coming out of the Prime Minister's office trying to tell us, his position, but we couldn't really figure out what his position was. But no one talked about gas.
It's a very good point. At that moment, we should have been like, okay, we're going to $2 a liter and we produce a lot of oil. What are we doing, Mr. Prime Minister?
Yeah, we produce a lot of oil to ship down to the U.S. to refine and sell us back. So we ship it at a discount, and then we get it back at a premium. So, again, you look at places like Norway, Russia, we're going to discount for a minute.
I'm sorry, Paul. What you're saying is we're tied to the nonsense or whatever difficulties the U.S. is experiencing, when there's absolutely no reason to cut that tie would give us a huge economic advantage compared to where we're at right now.
Right. And this, as I've said on previous shows, this is a decision we made it started in 1975. We started Petro-Canada. We went out and we decided we were going to nationalize our own gas, our own oil. And so we started to refine it. We started to sell it. We had ceilings and floors on gas prices that we self-imposed. I know that drove everyone on the west coast of Canada crazy because, private gas companies wanted the ability to...
But it reduced a lot of the market fluctuation, I think, at the time.
There weren't
right?
spikes.
Yeah.
Now, I think what really put Petro-Canada over the top, in my opinion, was coming into the 90s. They took off and they started to do international projects in Algeria, Netherlands, Tanzania, the UK, Syria, Italy, Libya, Trinidad, Tobago, Venezuela, Morocco.
Wow, they expanded.
Norway. So I think what happened is we got quite good at this. So, and I was telling you before the show, as a young man, one of my first office jobs was with Petro-Canada. And this was it was just before they actually privatized it. Or sorry, they sold it off.
Sold it off, yeah.
Yeah, before they sold it off. So, and it was a pretty miraculous company. Like it was, I think, it had, just in Alberta alone, it had 11,000 employees.
Wow.
And it was a big operation. I worked out of the North York Civic Center office here in Toronto. It was the full tower full of people. It was a go operation. And, the executive were like very motivated, high performing executive Canadians who were starting to branch out. Now, with the same model as Equinor in Norway, which, was actually at that time probably a little behind us. And so we were in front of them.
This is their model out there drilling in other parts of the world.
Yeah, so they had, but I think that's what caused the issues. And so then when Mulroney gets in the 90s, the early 90s, he says, let's sell this thing off, right? Because there had been so much, the U.S. companies and people abroad who were starting to compete with Petro-Canada weren't super happy, right?
Does anybody know what we sold it for at the time?
You know what? I'm going to get that for you on the next show. But I'm going to give you an interesting stat. Equinor, I just looked at the results for last year. It's a $150 billion a year U.S. company.
Oh,
that's what it makes. It makes net income between 25 and 35 billion. And it's contributed to date for their sovereign wealth impact fund. There sits a reserve of $1 trillion. So they have a reserve of $1 trillion. So when they hit hard times, they can dig into and use for their country. So at that point, by going
$1 trillion,
$1 trillion
changes the fate of a country.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it actually, so when Norway decides to pull their money from, a company in the U.S., the White House calls to make sure they're okay. Because the fund is so big and such a big investor in U.S. projects.
Wow.
That the White House says, are you okay? I know you're pulling from this. I know you're leaving this project. Is there anything we can do? That's how powerful little Norway, which has 5.6 million people, have become by taking the direction that we left in 1990. And I think we have to kind of pause because we're in this moment where we're dancing on the head of a pin. Think about it. One drone, one bad hit over in Russia changes the landscape of the country instantly, and no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to say, maybe we should go back, and maybe we should, and maybe, listen, I'm not advocating that we go back to a full Petro-Canada model. Don't get me wrong. There might be a hybrid model here somewhere where basically we just take care of our supply in Canada, and we keep prices in Canada. At a better price.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. Just making our own fuel.
Just making our own fuel. I hate
what's good about that is we can adhere to the liberal sensibilities of, keeping it green, which is always great.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're pumping oil for our own needs here in Canada.
Yeah.
Processing is what remains in the balance, no?
Yeah.
Well, Don Gilmore had said too, we already have one of the cleanest ways of extracting oil. Canada does this better than anybody else does right now.
And I'm pretty sure we could process it similarly.
I was just going to say, if we can do that, then I'm assuming we can come up with a very green, clean way of processing this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and it's interesting because we seem to have had this, all parties except for the Conservative Party were on board. So it's, Avi Lewis last night, I was hearing, his thing about, oil and gas and
oh, yeah,
electric.
the NDP has a new leader.
Yeah, no, and and I'm thinking to myself, Douglas, which was the leader at the time with Trudeau, and he was all on board with Petro-Canada at the time because he understood where we were in the country and what we needed to do with gas prices to stay competitive on the global world.
So he backed him in this.
He did back
venture.
him in. He backed him in. He said, listen, I understand why we have to keep gas prices reasonable, oil prices reasonable, because, we have to live, our manufacturing, we have to be competitive. If we're going to be if we're going to go to nationalize our, and decouple from the U.S., as we're talking about, we're going to have to figure out how to do that and get some competitive advantage. What better competitive advantage than to have our own oil and gas at reasonable prices?
I wonder how fast we could turn around the harvest and processing of oil in Canada. How quickly could we? I don't know what the process would be. Buying a refinery,
There's a lot of red tape. If we had that,
it's our own red tape, though. If the government just got out of the way of itself, how fast could we do this?
2 years.
Well, it's interesting. So Petro-Canada started in 75.
Yeah.
So that's when it did. Within a couple of years, they had bought two oil and gas companies with refineries in Canada, and they started production.
Yeah, that's what I mean. 2 years. It seems to be. They did this before with limited technology in 2 years, which means we could probably do it now even sooner. But 2 years that's a pretty good window.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, think about it. If I'm sitting now, some people say it's a bad time to do it. Maybe so, because quite frankly, the only ones cleaning up right now are the guys who, we sold it off. So we don't own it as a government. We have no stake in that game anymore. So the guys, even Russia now who are selling into the market, they're making more money, a little more money, because quite frankly, the market is good for them to sell at a higher price. Right?
We're too late to the game.
We're not too late.
But we don't know what the next 10 years are going to bring. But.
Yeah, I think the question we have to be asking, or we have to be talking about in the House and throughout government, how long is this going to go? How susceptible are we to seeing these huge impacts? And what is it going to do to our economy? They want to talk about stimulating housing. They want to talk about stimulating mining. To me, this is one we have to talk about what we're going to do if this keeps going and if this keeps on and on.
Mind if I throw you guys a hypothetical?
Please do. Sure.
Is this the time we say to the U.S., okay, we're stopping, we're not going to send you any more oil?
No, I don't think so.
And we renegotiate?
I think
you still want to send them oil. So but we have enough to take our own oil now. So
we have enough to keep that deal and start a whole new system.
Yes.
I guess what I'm
We're
saying...
not pissing them off, but we're still creating our own sense of revenue.
I guess what I'm saying is, can we eliminate, this is once again hypothetical, could we eliminate that cross-border processing return to Canada? Could we compress that in some way? Could we reduce the cost in that some way? Could we offset with oil instead of cash that way? Do we do any barter in the process to make it better for the Canadian people to get gas at a regulated price? It seems to me that if we're the ones supplying the oil to them and we're not making money at it, it behooves us to stop the chain of distribution to the U.S. long enough to renegotiate a deal. If we did that, would there be a deal to be had?
Well, I don't think
Or do we just have to...
I think if we keep sending them oil and we keep that deal, that's great. Now we don't have to buy it back. So we're not losing on that premium buyback. Now they have the ability to move that oil wherever they want. They don't have Canada as a customer anymore for the buying the premium back. They just have Canada as a supplier. So if we're supplying Canada with that our own new system and we're covering that end and more, there's money saved, is there not?
Ideally.
Again, we're a little. We've made ourselves captive. Of course, even the pricing of gas right now is based on the West Texas model, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're going off. So we're pricing even off of their own model. So
West Texas sweet crude, I believe it's called.
Exactly.
So how does that work, that pricing?
So we
Plus the discount.
We take a $20 a barrel discount because we have heavy crude from the refining cost, less the shipping cost, and we get to what we call a discounted price when we ship it down. Mm-hmm. Then when we get it back, we pay exactly what
anybody else would pay.
Right.
But by that time, we've increased the cost, and it's challenging for us. So and we pay it back on the back end, right? That's why our price per liter is higher, our price per gallon. But we're at that point, and all that was, how do I say it? It was palatable when it was a open, free market. We, paying higher than probably we should have been, but I think we were all kind of open to that. Now we're starting to seeing the risks and the instability. Like, that's the interesting part. We started Petro-Canada because of a war, the Yom Kippur War in 1973, in the same region. We had the same embargo issues with Saudi Arabia and Iran and all those. The same issues are the things we're dealing with today. We're back there again, and which is the crazy thing. We're back in the same spot, and we're looking at it, and we're all saying, well, I guess we're captive to this market.
Okay,
again.
now's your chance. Appeal to Carney. Tell him, let's get this going.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think maybe that's what we have to do next. Have you heard any of the parties make this suggestion at all?
No.
I haven't heard anybody even talk about oil.
No.
Not at all.
No, we talk about
talk about the price of gas.
Yeah, the price of gas.
We
But
talk
I mean,
about how we can
results,
help,
though.
how
like
we can help
solutions.
open up the Strait of Hormuz, for goodness sake.
Yeah, we can send our troops down there but that's not the real issue.
Can't we open up the Strait of Montana?
But the real issue in my mind is not only the eventual price of gas and oil, but quite frankly, we talk about EVs and we talk about converting and everything. We're not there yet either.
No.
So we're middled. We keep talking about the fact that as Canadians, we're middled right now. So we've sold off our one national asset years ago. We are in this model, which in an environment like this doesn't work for us.
Doesn't work now. Yeah.
Right? How do we get to the point where if it's going to take us years to get there, we're not going to be sitting exposed? Because there's nothing to say that this conflict in the Middle East doesn't go on and on and on and on and keep going on. Like, these are long conflicts that can go, like the embargo that changed the world, it caused the recession, was only 6 months in 1973. So that war went on for 6 months. The embargo only lasted, and it sent shockwaves. We're in month.
Well, we're in
two.
I guess technically this has been 5 weeks as of today.
Yeah. So we're in month 2, and quite frankly, are we going to go 6 months? And at the end of 6 months, where are we at? Because to your point, Mike, look at the countries that are already being impacted. So the ripple effect of all those, is they're not selling goods, they're not exporting goods, they're not doing anything. It's starting to slow, right? Those economies are all slowing. So therefore, any resources or any of the things we need from those countries to keep ourselves going, we're going to be doing a show coming up, which is very interesting. And it was on lithium.
Yeah, I was even going to touch on that I think that'll be a good watch for people, because we might think we're in the EV game. I'm not so sure that's true.
No, we only produce 2.6% of the world supply of lithium. We're not huge lithium suppliers.
Well, at least we've got that, right? Except we sold it off to a Chinese company.
Yes. Yeah. And so how many batteries are we going to make without importing something from another country?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that other country could be impacted by the oil and gas issues. Therefore, they're slowing. So the ability for them to mine, truck, logistically travel, ship, and land in Canada to make it to a plant to make EV batteries, that's all tough now. That's not all.
Sounds like they'll probably be getting them from Australia, right? And then we'll be buying these batteries.
I think we have to head in the direction of the next Petro-Canada. Truthfully, I think it's time. Even if it's a private venture in Canada that services Canadians, that uses Canadian oil, and maybe that's just a good investment for Canadians or a Canadian pension fund. Look what Equinor does. Look how Norway's handled it. Maybe a pension fund or some major fund within Canada could be the catalyst here.
There are some First Nation groups that are poking around on this, which is we're trying to get a show together. I think it'd be a great show. And they've actually said, listen, just give it to us. We have money in reserve. We have the abilities. Let us start and draw the rest of the financing. Listen, they have land. They have reserves on their land. They want to, they want to drill. They want to find it. Let's listen.
You know, Petro-Canada was a pretty good name. It was good branding.
It's a great name.
Yeah, I don't know what the next one would be called. Canagas? I don't know.
Well, as any of the viewers, if they're in the position I am, I came into this with no notes. You guys have all these great notes because I was here to learn. I want to learn about this. Not only do I understand a bit of it, there's a lot more that I could understand. So if Canada wanted to do this, and let's say we're going to push this in this direction, what are the first 3 steps that we have to do to get there?
Well, I think we have to be, number one, we have to sit down with Alberta, and we have to make sure we don't make the mess like we made last time when Petro-Canada started. So we have to say, listen, here's what we're trying to achieve. So we're not trying to, Petro-Canada had, like I said, they had ceilings and floors on gas prices. That's what they said we said as a country under our energy policy. And that scared everyone because, quite frankly, then they couldn't get, we say in Canada right now, we need to sell oil for $60 a barrel or we don't make money. I'm not sure that's completely true. I think that's kind of
an industry standard more than a requirement.
I think it's an industry standard. And I think, quite frankly, that's the way they condition us to tell us that their opportunity cost to sell it somewhere else would be lost. So I think what they're saying is we could sell it somewhere else for $60 or we can sell it to you.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that's
Would you remove that scale? Do you think that needs to be removed, the top and bottom of the market?
I think for like we talked about, the oil that we're selling or sending to the US, I think we just let that go with the West Texas sweet crude.
Just let
price,
it happen at that price.
and let that happen so we don't disrupt the model. The oil that we use for our own refineries gets discounted to a price that allows it to be sold back into Canada at a reduced price. So that's my methodology. So it's a little bit of a hybrid of what Petro-Canada was.
So it's almost closer to the Equinor plan.
Except for,
similar,
I think we don't, and this is what caused a lot of challenges with the U.S. companies and with some Canadian companies. I think we're very cautious on how we go outside of Canada. So
really make it a national effort. We don't need to be scouring the world for more oil. We've got enough here.
Yeah, Equinor became a global oil. Like they have divisions. Like it's amazing what they do. They not only drill and frack and all that other stuff. They do pipelines. They do solar. They do wind. They have
They're an energy company.
They have 20 divisions they branched off into, and they become a behemoth in the marketplace. I don't think we look to become a behemoth. And I think if we decide to go outside of Canada, I think we agree to do it with joint ventures with other oil companies that are doing business here in Canada.
Here in Canada, yeah.
So I think we say to them, we're not going to compete with you directly. We're going to partner with you. So I think there's some ways to kind of take some of the issues that happened in Petro-Canada days. I think the Petro-Canada team, like I mentioned to you, that I met way back when I was a young man, I think they were just highly motivated, good executives who were on a mission to prove that Canadians could be successful
in-house,
globally, anywhere in the world in oil.
With our own in-house.
Yeah, we were going to be the oil barons of the world.
And they did it. They did it. They started to really...
And that's when it started to... The world started to say, hold on a second, guys. You got the U.S. market for sure kind of said, okay, we don't need your competition out here.
Exactly. And, Mulroney ran on the, privatize. And we talked earlier, Mike, we've had some horrifically bad decisions on privatizing Crown Corps, highways, oil companies. We've
airports.
We've done some terrible decisions as a country along
Crown
the way.
lands. We do it constantly.
Yeah, but we should stop. I think we have to stop with the new environment. We've seen this playbook before. We're back here again. It's unfortunate we didn't put any contingency plans. No government sat down and said, what are our exposures? What are our risks? Like I said, one drone goes the wrong way in Russia right now. We're dancing on the head of a pin and the market's totally blowing up.
All right. Well, eyes to Russia, what they do next. And, with a bit of luck, we'll start to wake up here in Canada quickly. I don't see it happening fast, to be honest with you. Fast enough to make a difference now. We're going to pay the price. But this needs to be a reminder in the future that we have to insulate ourselves as a nation a little better here, I think.
Yeah, we need a plan.
Guys, thank you for schooling me. I am so into this idea.
So schooled like my friend Bradie. Paul, thank you. Bradie, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time here on TPL. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell a friend about it. I have a squeaky chair. It's not what you think, okay? Bradie, stop looking at me funny. And we'll catch you next time here. Thank you so much.
Patriotic means looking out for each other and fixing things together.
True patriotism is being in the country you love, surrounded by people you love, and great weather.
Being a patriot is being a part of your community and caring for it.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Patriotism is the one thing we all share.
It's okay to be critical of government and still be a patriot.
It's gratitude to your country.
Of course I'm a patriot. I'm Canadian. It's my home.
Well, actually, true patriot love is the mission.